Welcome everyone to another edition of Drunk Agile. Nisha jumping out of her skin as always. So happy to be here. The pillow is just right there, Nisha. Just so you know, it's right,
she literally just finished a treat, so she's probably going to be like that for a bit.
She's done. So we have Nisha, star of the show, with us. You know, unfortunately, you get one, you get that other one. So we have Prateek.
I won't get one.
Prateek Singh as well. My name is Daniel Bacanti. Thank you for joining us, Prateek. What are you drinking tonight?
We keep going back to this because I have a bottle still sitting in the Blair Athol.
That's a good one.
59.8%. Campbelltown, Highland. So, yeah. The Cadenhead's Campbelltown, but the whiskey is Highland. Yeah. Bourbon cask.
Oh, great.
It's just beautiful.
I'm switching things up tonight. Forgive me, everyone. It still starts with a W, though. I was just telling Prateek, for whatever reason, my wife opened a bottle of wine yesterday and didn't finish it. That's sacrilegious, right? So I'm going with a Tignanello tonight, one of my favorites. And those of you, if you're familiar with red wine, you will know it's one of the best out there, from my perspective, anyway. So, cheers, everyone.
Yes.
Following on, so we've done 2 episodes in a row on the Flaw of Averages. We've had actually several questions come in based on the first 2 episodes. The first episode, especially when we were talking about one of the problems with the Flaw of Averages, distilling a forecast down to a single number that is an average. One of the problems with that is your chances of hitting exactly that number, exactly that average, pretty close to zero. In many cases, it's actually zero, right? But in a lot of cases, it's even if the average is an option, the chances of hitting that average exactly are zero. So we had a lot of questions come in, about, well, nobody ever really expects to hit exactly that average. They're thinking, hey, it'll be, if we give a date, it's on that date or before, right? People are think about this stuff in terms of a range. So we want to address that, because that's certainly not been my experience when dealing with customers. And we do have some examples of this. If you are in a situation where your customers kind of think that way, that's maybe a good thing. I don't know, Prateek, can you start us off with why it's dangerous to assume, when you give a single date that is an average outcome, to assume that your customers are thinking on or before that date, therefore you have a 50% chance? Why is that thinking dangerous?
Yeah, I'm sure you'll hit this point later as well, and you've got better examples than I do on this, but I would also, everyone who's thinking in that manner, I would also flip that thinking a little bit to say, at the same time as you're telling them 50% on or before, you're also telling them 50% on or later. So it's if they're thinking, if you think they're thinking that way, of 50% on before, they might very well be thinking 50% on or later as well. Which, yeah, that's, again, I know you have a couple of examples that go deeper into this.
Yeah, should we dive right into that? I mean,
let's go.
Okay, whatever. The first exhibit A for what I want to talk about is about 10 years ago. Bennett Vallet and I don't know, I think we've talked about Bennett before. Hopefully we have. He was a product director at the time, Siemens Health Services. And I came in to help them out a little bit. And they did a lot of this stuff. They did Monte Carlo forecasting and things like that. They came up with the date, and they communicated for their budgeting cycle, for their planning cycle, whatever. They communicated what that date should be, based on our assessment of risk. It turns out, as we ran that project, as we ran that particular release, I guess I should say, we came in quite a bit early. We actually came in more than 10% early of the date or the number. I can't remember exactly. This is documented. We can point everybody to the case study. More than 10% early of the forecast that we provided. And Bennett actually got called into some executive management board or something like that. He actually got in trouble for this because the company said, why did you tell us this date and you actually finished 10% early? And in their minds, finishing early wasn't a good thing. In their minds, having that delta of more than 10% was a very, very, very bad thing because they assumed some stuff. They assumed Bennett was padding his estimates. He assumed the team was They assumed the team was sandbagging. They assumed all these bad things because in their mind, if they had known the real number, if they knew that this project was going to, or this release was going to come in whenever it did, they could have taken the money that they allocated to that project and put it on something else, started something else new, right? Increase their work in progress, whatever. So when Bennett was communicating these forecasts to his higher ups, they weren't sitting there thinking, there's 50% chance it's going to be on. Or they're thinking, hey, you better be within 10% of this date or bad things are going to happen. So they were thinking exactly, you gave this forecast, this is exactly what it's going to be. So that's one example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just to add that, this is the reason you want to express. This is one of the reasons why you want to express your forecast as a range. And people who are asking the question about this are absolutely right about, yeah, we don't want to give a single point forecast. If the range is implicit, let's make it explicit. Let's actually make it explicit that it is between now and that date with a 50% probability is what we're talking about. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So that's Siemens Health Services. In that case, if you just Google Kanban at Siemens Health Services, you'll find this write up. Like I said, it maybe is a little bit dated now because it is over 10 years old, but I think it's still kind of an interesting story. That's Siemens Health Services. What else? I mean, there was something interesting that came up in training today that we
we were actually running a training this morning, and one of the participants said that if you are a contractor, and we were talking about pretty much the stuff. If you're a contractor, giving a number, giving a single point number, and then coming in before that could actually be dangerous for you because the company you're contracting with might go, this contractor always pads their estimates, and it might actually lead to loss of credibility, lead to eventually loss of that contract. And that's another example where setting up that estimate or that forecast as a range is going to help you to say, this is, I believe I'll be able to get done by this date with this much confidence, rather than I'll be able to get done on this date.
Right. And even if another example we were talking about right before this we started recording, even if you're lucky enough to be in a situation where customers are thinking in terms of ranges, when you give them that single date, that single deterministic date, I was talking to Prateek about some work that we're having done on our house, and the contractor estimate came in as March. They're like, hey, this will be done at the end of March. My guess is most customers, when that contractor communicates that date, most customers don't think, oh, well, there's a 50% chance of it being done before then. Most customers are thinking there's a 100% chance that it's going to be done by the end of March, right? Because that's the date that the contractor gave, and there's a 0% chance that it's going to be beyond that. So even if your customers start thinking in terms of ranges, most likely they're still thinking about those ranges deterministically, unless you tell them there's a 50% chance of hitting this range or 50% chance of missing this range. Unless you actually tell them that, they're probably going to assume 100%. There was something else you were going to bring up, right? There was something else you were going to
bring something else up. Yeah. There must be. I've had a little bit of whiskey, so I might not remember. But as we were talking through this earlier, we were talking about how a single point forecast, or even that 50% range, even saying that this I'm going to be done by this date, you're giving very, very little idea of risk. You don't understand your risk profile. So you're only giving a single point forecast. Well, okay, you gave me this, and let's say you're able to communicate to your customer and have them understand that this is a 50% chance of getting it by this date. Well, what if the date is out by 1 week? How does that change my risk? What if it's in by 1 week? How does that change my risk? Where I'm willing to take up to a 15% risk. What is your 85% date? I'm willing to take a 30% risk. What is your 70% risk? That risk profile is not exposed to the customer at all when you give a single point forecast, even if it's a single point and range. The reason, at least why we believe that risk profile is important, one is so that people can make educated decisions, and second is people can make the more important decision of what not to work on, the more important decision of what to prioritize, and say, okay, if going out a week decreases my risk by 30%, we can probably work on this, but going in increases it by 30%. Well, let's not do this other stuff so that we can get the most important things done. That's the other information you're not getting when you're giving a single point forecast.
So I don't know that we want to necessarily harp on this too much. This is, like I said, this is kind of our third in the series of Flaw of Averages. Just to kind of recap, Flaw of Averages rears its ugly head everywhere when you kind of least expect it. The antidote to the Flaw of Averages is everything that Prateek was just talking about. Instead of giving a single point forecast, especially a single point forecast that is an average, as much as possible, give a range. What is our range of possible outcomes, and what is our probability of, in terms of our forecast, what is our probability of being able to hit that range? That we say this all the time until we're blue in the face, but you have to be able to give your customers that information, as Prateek just said, so that they can assess risk, right? They have a much better understanding of the risk they're willing to take on than you do. But you need to be able to communicate to them. If they push for a date, I don't know if we talked about this, but it's something that Dr. Sam Savage mentions all the time. It's like, if they're pushing for a date, the answer that Dr. Sam Savage gives is, well, you tell me what date you want, and then I will tell you your chances of hitting that date. Right? And he kind of flips on them. So not to say that your customers will always be enlightened, not to say that your customers will always like the answer that you're giving them, but at least it's much better having them tell you what risk you want, rather than automatically assuming all that risk when you give them that single point forecast. I said a lot to wrap us up. I don't know if you have a final word for us. I was going to hand it over to you, but I kept talking, so sorry.
Yeah, that's all good. I'll just add that it does not matter what system you work in right now. It doesn't matter if you're doing Kanban, Scrum, Safe, Waterfall. Doesn't matter what you're doing. The things that we have talked about, the metrics that you've heard Dan and I talk about, and the techniques you've heard Dan and I talk about, they are applicable and exist all the time. So you, regardless of your system, should be able to apply these things and give people that risk profile of when will it be done, so that they can choose how much risk they want to take. You don't have to be doing, we're big Kanban folks. You don't have to be doing Kanban in order to do all this stuff.
So there you have it. Next week, or whenever we get together again, I'm assuming we'll be moving on off of the Flaw of Averages. But that does not mean please, we love the questions, we love the comments. Please keep sending them in. My guess is we'll maybe move on to some other topics after this. We've done the Flaw of Averages arc, so we'll go on to something else, and hopefully I'll be back to whiskey at that time as well. So for Nisha, who was making a little bit of noises earlier, but she's back to her spot. So for Nisha, for Prateek, my name is Daniel Vacanti, as I mentioned. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next episode. Cheers, everybody.